Live.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to World Ocean Week live at ADEX Pixel Virtual Expo. And today, in conjunction and in collaboration with Blue Hope Foundation, we do have here with us I would say someone that is fronting ocean plastic in her own way, in education and also in innovation, brilliantly, in my own opinion, of course. So today we are going to discuss about citizen science and also some innovation that is with regards to the ocean plastic discussion. And today we have two speakers from Plastic Collective. We have here Louise Hardman, the founder and CEO of Plastic Collective. Hi, Louise.
Hi, everybody.
And also we do have Khalifa, the Innovations Director of Plastic Collective as well. Hi, Ali.
Hello, hello.
So today, the topic of discussion that we have is something that it's relatively quite new for me, but Louise will be telling us a little bit more with regards to this concept. The title, today we'll be talking about water and the law of least resistance. And also joining here with me today is my colleague, Amelia Lim, will be coming in to co-host together with me. So Louise, welcome again. And and also, it has been a great journey that we had together with Asia Dive Expo ADEX and together with Plastic Collective. Perhaps when you shared with me this theory yesterday, I was a bit intrigued. Perhaps you can share with us a little bit more about what is the law of least resistance, in your opinion. Then after that, we can jump in a little bit about Plastic Collective, please.
Yeah. Okay, so to give you a bit of background to the law of least resistance on why I use it in my life as a strategy to work and live, I'll take you back to sort of the reason why I started my business, the Plastic Collective. So a number of years ago, I was quite disempowered. I felt disempowered seeing all the plastic pollution going into the oceans, and I felt like I couldn't do anything. It was just quite overwhelming. There was, the stories of the animals dying, the 8 million tons going into the ocean. It was pretty full on. It was around 2016 that I got to a point where I just felt, hopeless. A friend rang up and she said, are you okay? And I said, no, I feel so disempowered. I just feel like I've got no purpose. And she said, water. You need to work with water. And at that moment, that brought back all this memory of my passion towards keeping plastics out of the ocean. And I realized that was sort of something that I needed to do. And so it was a way of empowering myself to try and find solutions to the plastic waste going into the ocean. And that was the start of my business called Plastic Collective. Over the next 4 years, we started developing solutions for remote and regional communities to address plastic pollution. And in doing this, I had to go to a lot of remote and regional communities. And I actually went searching for the most polluted places, the places that had big rubbish dumps, places where you drive over a bridge and there was all this plastic thrown into a river and it was just cascading down the mountain. I'd go to these massive dump sites that were 15 meters high, covering 22 hectares, and the leachate was moving out into the mangroves and killing mangroves. So I was seeing a lot of horrific scenes, and I was seeing children coughing from burning the plastics, animals and so forth. So it was quite an intense field that I was going into. And to survive this, I started thinking I had to sort of keep my sanity without going crazy, without feeling completely lost with this massive problem. So that's when I sort of found, I was reading some books and I found the law of least effort, or the law of least resistance, which is, it's a very, very interesting it's a very interesting theory that helps you cope in these situations and keep you going, keep you moving through here and keep you empowered. So basically, yeah, so the law of least effort, it came from a Deepak Chopra book called the 7 Laws of Spiritual Success. But there's 3 components to it, and I'm happy. I think Nora, I've sent you a little PDF that we have that we can share with people. So yeah, so basically the three aspects, there's acceptance, responsibility, and defenselessness. And so the acceptance side of things is you'll accept things as they are right now, including attitudes, situations, and events. However, you may want to change the future. So that's sort of around accepting. So for example, I'd go to a place that was so polluted, I would accept that it was so polluted as it is right now. There's nothing I could do at that moment to change that. I had to accept that. That's quite a hard thing to do. But once you can do that, it sort of allows you to move forward, to start to look at solutions and start to find a way through it. The second aspect is responsibility. So you're taking responsibility only for yourself. You take responsibility for your habits, for your actions. This empowers you because it sort of makes you feel, good with what you're doing, but you're not lecturing to anybody else around you, but they're seeing you as a good example of something, that they can follow. So I found that as very powerful as far as I didn't have to tell people around me, to do, that they should be doing this or they shouldn't be doing this. It was more, I took responsibility for myself, and that was really, really helpful. And the last one is defenselessness, where you don't defend your own actions or your choices to anybody, and not trying to convince others to think like me. So that's a way of sort of just understanding your own behavior, and then people start to see what you're doing, and then there's this sort of beautiful supportive mechanism around that. So I found that using that law, it was just super powerful it was my survival strategy, basically, when going to these places, that I could cope and I could keep doing the work that I wanted to do.
I mean, Louise, your background naturally is an educator and also a scientist and also an innovator. And you do spend a lot of your time with grassroots communities in terms of engagement, and you do delve yourself in the areas of chemistry or plastic, especially in the scalar economy as well. So this application of this theory that you live for, in terms of it helping you communicate with the grassroots community populations or communities, has it always been a smooth journey from the beginning, or is there stumbles here and there? If you can, if you can share with us a little bit of a story behind one experience, maybe, I think that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. It's been 4 years of very hard work, and we've been slowly building our team, and we've got a great team now. And we have been developing waste plastic solutions, so in the form of hardware equipment. We started with a Schroeder machine, which is a shredder extruder, and we delivered education training programs along with that. And recently, at the beginning of this year, we got a grant to research and develop a bigger containerized solution with a more advanced sort of software hardware stack and a more comprehensive education program. It has been a lot of challenges on the way. Probably one of the most interesting challenges was when we went to we go to remote communities and deliver the machines. One time we had the machine at customs ready to go. We had the training ready to go, but the customs simply wouldn't release it for a month. So all our crew had to come back home, and we had to wait for that to be released. So there's a lot of sort of learning, understanding island time, different time zones you're working in, working with smaller communities, grassroots communities. There's you have to find the local buy-in. So you have to meet with the local leaders, the Indigenous leaders, the chiefs of the village, and you have to educate them first. So you have to empower them with the knowledge of what you're doing and how you're doing it and why plastic to them can be a resource. Once they understand that, the entire community will follow along. And that was a really interesting thing that we found. Yeah, lots of little challenges on the way. It's been interesting.
Louise, was there any resistance with the community itself when you are trying to actually tell them about the bad effects of not recycling right, maybe, or even like consuming what do you call this, plastic packagings, and then you don't have any kind of a system of recycling that is being inculcated within the community, or maybe they were not really they do not really understand if they were to throw that waste anywhere without a proper disposal system, that would eventually go to the ocean. Was there any such resistance at that point of time?
No, there wasn't so much resistance. There was more, if the communities didn't understand the process, or they didn't understand the effect of materials either being burnt or dumped in the ocean, they actually felt shame. So the shame was what prevented them from, changing behavior, because they'd sort of almost stop and they wouldn't know what to do. So once we started addressing how to empower them with knowledge and giving them the understanding, like we'd talk to the village chiefs about, if you burn that type of plastic, that can really damage your children's lungs. Once they knew that, they'd stop the burning. Or if they understood the cause and effect of, if that plastic goes down the river, it goes to the ocean, kills the corals, and then affects the fishing, then they will change that behavior because they understand the process then. So we were really focused on teaching the process to eliminate shame. And then after the shame was gone, they had pride because they understood what was going on and they could share that knowledge with the rest of the community. And they're also doing good for their community. So that aspect was really powerful. But it was also like using that law of least effort or law of least resistance was also not telling them what to do. It was just giving them knowledge, and then they make that decision to take the responsibility for themselves. And they do, they always do. They were very open-minded and very adaptable once they understood process.
Thanks, Louise. Plastic Collective is also spend a lot of time in going to certain villages all across Asia, and also some parts of I think around Australia as well, right? To share that kind of knowledge with regards to having that not you. I mean, like, you do spend a lot of time empowering people with this concept of teaching, and also you do have an innovation solutions to as another phase to you having that education as well. So you do have this machine or product called the shredder, which actually cuts or break down plastics, single-use plastic basically, into small little chips. Would you explain a little bit more about this with us?
Yeah. It started as the shredder, which has many different spellings that people do, which is really interesting. The shredder was a two combination machine, a shredder and an extruder. Initially, that was developed as a mobile machine, 120 kilograms, that could be transported quite easily from place to place. We delivered a number of these. We delivered 4 projects, 2 over in Borneo and Bali, and 2 in Australia. And what we found from them is that we needed to upgrade it into a bigger, sort of more, not bigger model, but a more comprehensive model that sort of addressed a number of issues that we found in those communities using this smaller machine. We needed, safer electrics. We needed a containerized system. We needed an upgrade in the shredding, and we needed a bit more diversity in product development because the products were not suitable at for all the communities to make a profit from. So in doing that, we've sort of grown our Schroeder machine up into a Schroeder recycling station, which incorporates the entire recycling system that can go into a community and help them turn waste into resources. But in doing this, my background was quite limited in this area. I'm not an engineer or a designer. So we've engaged with some fantastic people, including Ali and the university in Australia to sort of start to fill in those gaps, and also working with South Pole with compliance and software applications. So we've sort of grown it up into a much bigger, more comprehensive model that we're researching and developing this year. We're getting the current prototype up and running, and then we'll be delivering 2 pilot programs to remote Indigenous communities in Australia, hopefully in early next year.
Well, I think let's just ask Ellie a little bit more about the innovation part of Plastic Collective. Hi, Ellie.
Hello, hello.
Ellie, what I understand is that you do work. I mean, like you are actually driving Plastic Collective together with the rest of the team to work towards changing systems and the inventive culture. So you have this great approach to building and working with creative groups. Perhaps you can share with us a little bit more on your solutions for that one.
Yeah, sure. Well, you know, inventive culture is something that we didn't know what we were doing at the time, but you know, looking back, you start to make sense of some of your behaviors. So I've been operating my own consulting firm since 1995, and I'm trained as a mechanical engineer and as a designer. So sometimes really focusing on the creative aspects, and other times really looking at the very technical. And that's kind of, you know, pushed me into innovations. That's what I've been doing for a lot of clients throughout the world. And it's interesting because, you know, if you're able to do something really innovative, then, you know, there's a lot of value in patents, intellectual property, breakthroughs, all kinds of stuff, because it's never been made before. Unfortunately, when you get into the actual implementation of it, there's a problem because it's never been made before. And so that's kind of really pushed me into the making aspect. So it's one thing to kind of come up with the ideas and the engineering and the design for how something's going to go, but to actually put it into practice, that's usually where like it's really tricky, you know, where the rubber hits the road, and you really have to see how we're going to implement this in a very practical way. And for that, you can't just do that as one person. You need people with you. You need a lot of people who are focusing on the same outcomes, but have completely different skill sets. And in many cases, working with experts like we have assembled with Plastic Collective, I cannot really give guidance to people who are much more skilled in their professions than me. So all I can really do is just try to, you know, reinforce what the mission is, what we're trying to do, and, you know, and by supporting them with an inventive culture, when they have ideas, when they have thoughts, to not pass judgment, yes or no, or, you know, this or that, but to say, well, how are we going to get that done? And how do you empower them? And we found that over time, all the best projects we've done have that team spirit. You know, you know it when you're in it, you know, when you feel like things are buzzing and things are happening and people are beginning to do things. And so what you're doing is not necessarily focusing on any one person, on any one solution, but you're focusing on that culture, how those people come together and what are they going to do, and how can you empower them to use those skills that are so much better than mine, but are driving in the same direction as the rest of the team. And so that's where we found that inventive culture becomes a thing that you invest in that allows everyone to do their best work.
So in driving that, you did a business design box that has been doing cradle to cradle, recycled ocean products. Perhaps you can share with us a little bit more in context to that one, please.
Yeah, well, I think one of the elements, building off what I was just saying, one of the elements of inventive culture is really relates to what Louise was just talking about. And that is when you see a problem, you have two options. And that is either going to have to accept that problem the way it is, whether it's plastic in the ocean, and you have to shut yourself off and say, it's there, I'm here, or you have to engage that problem and say, I'm going to do something about it. And what we found was that with our best employees and our best team members, that if we continuously shut down the things that they've identified as things that are important to them, then you really are going to have kind of a negative impact on the rest of their workday. So what we found is that the more we engaged our community and the more we attuned our senses, the more problems we would be faced with, but also that the better creative chops we were getting along the way. And so, it's not hard to open the newspaper, go online, whatever, and like see ocean plastic right now. It's a very big problem. And so each of us every day, when we read that, we have the option. Are we going to address it, or are we just going to have to accept it? And if, for a creative person, it's very difficult because you can't be creative without being discontent. By nature, you cannot be creative unless you perceive that there's a better way to do something. So creative people really get tortured by environmental distress because they really don't know what to do. They know they have to do something, but man, there's so many things to focus on. There's so many problems. And at the same time, if they cut themselves off from too many creative problems, they'll actually start to kind of go dead inside. You actually start to lose your creative impulse. The trick is, how do you engage just enough? And Designbox has been doing consulting for many years in sporting goods, a lot of it in the outdoors. So cycling and hiking and all kinds of physical activity outside. Well, the more we're outside, the more our employees are outside, the more our customers are outside. And especially right now, if you're in the water as a fishing, boating, you name it, you see that plastic, see that ocean plastic, and at a certain point, you just have to do something about it. So I've been working on various fronts to work with ocean plastic. I learned early on from personal mentor and hero, William McDonough, the author of Cradle to Cradle, who really took me under his wing to help me start understanding what is a comprehensive view of sustainability. Not just, carbon footprint, not just water, not just, one single issue, but what is a holistic way of understanding sustainability? And that's really been a guiding light for me, because every day I can find a new standard. Every day I can find yet another thing I'm supposed to do or not do. But yeah, you really need like an underlying philosophy and framework to be able to understand how to deal with the things in front of us. And so we found as with a lot of the projects that we were doing, when you're a fisherman and you're seeing plastic, you really start to care about, what can I do about this ocean plastic? Is there something I can do, some way I can participate because I really care about it? And by applying a cradle to cradle framework, we were able to then start saying, well, how can we reutilize those materials? Because they're not waste. They are just fugitive plastics floating around, and we need to give them a home. We need to steward that material. And who knows, maybe we can even make it into a fishing tackle box for that fisherman. So now they feel like they're actually part of the solution. There's something they can do. There's some way they can take action. And so that's really a lot of the work I've been doing, is trying to figure out, how do you connect the two ends of the circular economy? So instead of like the take from the environment, make something and then waste it, like the linear economy, how do you take something, design something so that it can be continuously reutilized, which means you use only healthy materials, you only use healthy processes. You don't burn a bunch of coal to do it. You try to find the way that can be regenerative, and products that are designed for disassembly, designed for recycling and reuse and upcycling, things like that. And so that's really where most of my work has been centered, is looking at how can you use design as a force for good.
Thanks, Ellie. So in order for you to build that kind of a process through creativity, well, you did mention that being around certain environments could actually evoke your emotions that actually leads to, creativity and some form of innovation. So in your experience, how is Plastic Collective using that to give back to the environment, and also what are the ways that Plastic Collective is pushing that forward in terms of programs, or maybe in terms of products, or even what is the vision basically?
Well, I'll share from my perspective, but really I'm really here to implement Louise's vision. But listen, in recycling, it's been my experience that there's a couple key things that are a real problem. And one of them we call the last mile problem, which is, recycling in an urban environment when there's huge density has one kind of a cost structure. But when you talk about accessing thousands of islands that don't really have any formal waste collection, and recovery facilities and other things in place, it becomes very, very difficult because you don't really have an access to them. And then to go harvest those materials from these thousands of islands and then bring them into a centralized location to process them and all that becomes very arduous, very energy consuming, and very labor consuming, and very cost consuming. And so as a result, it's usually cheaper just to let it be and not recycle. And that is one real huge problem that we've identified. A second one is that we don't really know sometimes who's involved. In the waste industries and in a lot of rural areas, we're not always sure exactly who's doing what. Are people being treated well? We know there's so much forced labor issues that persist into the modern era. There are so many inequities that happen with different migrant populations. And none of us really want to support any of that. We're all a little bit wary of that. So between those two elements, it becomes very difficult. So rather than looking at a centralized solution, I think what's brilliant about Plastic Collective is looking at a decentralized system. So rather than taking all this plastic that's found in a remote place, bringing it all the way back to a central location to recycle it, make something useful out of it, and then put it back in a boat going all the way back to these decentralized locations or these remote locations again, why not just do that there? And so what we've been now working on, which is just building off years and years of work between Louise and Plastic Collective's work so far, is to start scaling this in a very operationally efficient way, which is basically a micro factory, a micro recovery facility that can be the central hub for people to bring the recovered materials. In certain cases where if they can be processed and they're safe and all that, then we can possibly sell some of those materials. In other cases, what we can do is actually turn those into the next product for the community. Perhaps they need plastic lumber, maybe they need roof tiles, maybe they need pavers. Is there a way we can take these materials that are polluting the rivers and through creating jobs in the local community, do job training, education, turn these things into safe products that they will value, and instead of sending money out of the community to go buy these useful products, now the money stays in the community and it becomes something that you can have local pride for. So what's really interesting with Plastic Collective is it has this multivariable thing. It has benefits not just on plastic. We're talking about education, we're talking about employment, we're talking about industry, and we're talking about making industries more resilient and self-sufficient.
Yeah, yes, Ali. It's interesting that you that Plastic Collective is trying to more it's working its way into making life a little bit more sustainable in a 360 format kind of way. And in terms of projects that has been exercising this format, is there any case studies or example that you can cite with us where this community are actually adapting to this whole flow of 360 way of life?
Yeah, I mean, Louise, I think you would be able to speak a little bit better to the history of it, but certainly with Plastic Collective. So I'll let you take it from here.
Yeah. So probably the best one at the moment that we're working with is in northern Bali, a place called Les Village. So previously all their material was basically dumped in a river as they drove their motorbikes across the river, dumped in the river. They had set up a facility there so they could collect the material in one pit, and that was regularly burned. So the children were coughing and very sick. When we got there, there was a community there that was really trying hard to try and find a solution. So we got some sponsorship and we brought our Shredder recycling program to their community. And we've been working with them for the last year and a half, or probably longer than that, 2 years now, to sort of build this program up. So we learned a great deal from delivering a Shredder program to them. They stopped the burning, they started collecting material, they started getting income, they started employing about 4 or 5 people. The community really liked it. It became a place of pride where people would come and look, tourists would come and look, rather than it was no longer a trash place. It became, and that's what I'm talking about, the sense of pride that is developed, which is really, really important. And since then, so with the team we have now, with Ali and our group in London, and we've got people in Bangkok and in Australia that are developing this, the hardware and the software solution around it, as well as we're working with South Pole on developing plastic credits, where companies can offset their plastic use and apply plastic credits for remote communities to go and recover amounts of plastic on their behalf. So it's sort of like a sponsorship on their behalf, similar to carbon credits. And that's actually making these communities, recycling industries, quite sustainable and quite profitable. Without that, because of the distance that these communities have to transport materials and the difficulty they have with market, it was like a bit of a touch and go on whether they are sustainable or not. But now we've sort of brought in the plastic credit system, it's sort of turning into a much more robust model. So we've been getting a lot of information from this community, working very closely with them on, all of that's feeding into our current system at the moment. So yeah, there's been some really good developments and, really good partnerships formed. And we also, when I first started Plastic Collective, it was all about the collective. It wasn't just about one business going in and telling a community how to do things. It was about a network of small communities engaging with each other, talking to each other, sharing information, sharing resources, and creating a really strong network in that region so that they could overcome any, environmental or economic or social problems that sort of start to build this collective team in a way for regional communities. So that was always the vision that I had, that I thought that's how people are going to address these problems, is if they work together on it. And so part of our business model is to collaborate with many different companies. We collaborate with, the biggest plastic producers to the biggest plastic manufacturers to the smallest grassroots communities. So we collaborate with every type of business that you can imagine to try and solve this problem, because our mission is to stop the plastics going into the sea. And, I see it as a real group effort that, we all have to address it. We all have to work together to address it.
Which is true that to solve anything, it has to be based on collaborative action. Actually, one on its own can't can't move the whole system, I feel. Well, Louise, what is the next big plan aside from the plastic credits that Plastic Collective is working on in your concept of trying to curb the plastic going into the oceans itself? And also, are you thinking of going towards the circular economy industry, or are you going to be channeling or funneling or focusing into the waste management solutions? Or yeah, so basically, perhaps you can share with us, what is the big grand plan for Plastic Collective maybe in the next 3 years, perhaps?
Yep. Yeah, so our big grand plan is basically to incorporate circular economy principles into resource recovery and changing the whole mentality from waste management to resource recovery with that embedded circular economy principles throughout it. And to do this, we're looking at, currently we have 2 pilot programs with what we call our Plastic Collective system, which is quite a comprehensive system, and we've thought about it a great deal. And we're looking at another 10 pilot programs. So we want to do 12 pilot programs in all over the next 3 years to really get a model that works and get it down to economic, viable cost point, so we can roll these out to remote communities or regional communities. It doesn't have to be island communities, but it's basically places that are disadvantaged or finding it hard to access any waste services. So the idea is that we test and trial this model thoroughly, and then communities can afford it, and it can be a model that they can afford, they can get, and it can be sort of financed through, corporations, which to be paid back because they're starting to join this whole global economy, new plastic economy, basically. So it's giving them access to an economy that they were never in before. A lot of material was just going there, and it was a one-way stream of plastics going into these places and nothing coming out apart from coming out through the water currents.
Thanks, Louise. Thanks, Ali, for that talk. I find it really inspiring, this idea of the circular economy with circularity, not just in terms of keeping materials from going to the landfill or going to the oceans, but also keeping resources from leaking out of the communities themselves and actually using them to redirect to financially empowering these communities. I think it's great. So thank you for that. One question that's on my mind is that, given that plastic is so pervasive and so convenient at the moment, it is a great first step to empower people with the knowledge and of the process of how to manage the plastic waste. But at the same time, it's commonly known that plastic cannot be recycled infinitely, and that the quality of plastic does degrade as you recycle it. And so with the idea of a circular economy, it's kind of, plastic is not the best material to be, I guess, especially single-use plastics, to be supporting a circular economy. So in your opinion, is there any, or do you have any sense of how, the same innovative frameworks and the same educational concepts can be used to catalyze the shift away from single-use plastics and towards a more sustainable model, or do you think that's more a matter of institutional change, working with the big plastic producers and big corporations rather than working with the collective community?
Yeah, I think
we can both probably answer this. Do you want to go first, Ali?
Sure. Yeah, I've heard that objection brought up about plastics before. With there is a theoretical limit to when plastics become impractical to recycle. We are so far away from scratching the surface on that theoretical number. To me, it's not. If anything, it kind of just sends people kind of the wrong message. We're so far away from that, and most of the plastics that we see are going to be blended into, like recycled materials can be blended into virgin materials and all that. So there's nothing really to dissuade us from recycling. or thinking that we can recycle extremely effectively. Our recycling capture rate is so low that I don't ever see us kind of approaching that limit where it becomes impractical. It also depends on the use of those materials. So different performance characteristics will demand different properties. So there's low properties and high property usages and things like that. So again, it's probably another case we don't really worry about how many times a polymer has been recycled. I think we need to get better at that. We need to get better at understanding that recycling is extremely important, because otherwise it's going to enter this fugitive state where it becomes just kind of everywhere. Now, there's some good things about plastic, I mean, I know that, for instance, getting clean water to people to prevent dysentery, like it's hard to beat what plastic water bottles have done. And I hate that about plastic water bottles. But you have to acknowledge there's a reason why we're in the place we are. And really the number one reason is if we only solve problems one at a time and in a singular focus, that the objective is to only deliver clean water, but not to enhance the overall health of a population. Those are two different ways of framing the idea about how to get clean water to someone. Then I think we'll continue to make the same mistakes. So it's not a singular issue about recycling. It's about a generalized understanding of the health of a community. And that anytime there is a new solution, and this is what I love about Plastic Collective, is that you look at the whole ecosystem effect. And that anything that you do kind of has a comprehensive and multivariant aspect to it, so that you really come with an ecosystem, not just a singular like magic shot.
Yeah,
Louise, what else would you have to add?
Yeah, I might just add to that. We did start, like, our principles are based on plastic neutral, which is single-use plastics we over-consume single-use plastics. That's a definite. And the plastics are not valued as a resource. They're thrown away and they get called waste. So one of the things in our education program, we deliver a schools program teaching kids about plastics. We teach them about which ones should be eliminated from the stream, including PVC, polystyrene, from single-use plastics, because they are not recyclable in very many industries at all. How multi-laminate plastics are a major problem in the environment. Soft plastics have got incredible damages in environmental areas like reefs and so forth. And then you have your three polymers that can be recycled, that should be a pure stream. So there's sort of an aspect that we do teach communities and individuals on how to reduce your own single-use plastic. Particularly in the Western communities, we have a consumption up to 100 kilograms per person per year. In a lot of poor regions we work in, their consumption is around about 10 to 20 kilograms per year. So the reduction strategies really should be focused in the West to get their consumption right down. And we need to recover the materials in the poorer communities that need to have food or water delivered to their areas, and finding solutions for them as well. So, yeah.
Thanks, Louise. You brought a very interesting fact where, we should be focusing on the Western communities in terms of the consumption of plastic, single-use plastic. But strangely, the figures or the single-use plastic that we found in the oceans are being drifted all the way to most of Asia's rivers and to the oceans. So I mean, it gives a sense where single-use plastic conundrum is really a global issue and a problem, and it should be tackled all across the world, I guess. And then you did mention that certain solutions, like when you talk about circular economy, there's so many people going through different aspects of tackling them, like, for example, pyrolysis system, or even like looking into packaging, and then converting packaging to making use of more vegan source, like, for example, rubber or maybe paper or something like that. and also there are certain chemists that is actually working on reducing certain chemicals or polymers from the basic PET bottles to make it more sustainable. I mean, like, in your opinion, Ellie and also Louise, before we close this session, what are your thoughts that this consumption of single-use plastic, or the trend of this whole topic will go forth in, I don't know, in the next 10 years perhaps?
Well, I thought, you know, Louise brought up a really good point about the multi-layer films and things. You know, trained as a mechanical engineer, we was always kind of like design the ultimate thing, you know, like the ultimate strongest, or, you know, something that has the highest performance. And that's usually like the way an engineer thinks. And in sustainability, you hear about people kind of talking about where things have come from, like they used organic cotton, or, you know, they use a recycled material. I think what's really missing from the dialogue is where it's going. And, you know, we can look at a tree for inspiration, you know, that you can grow a solar panel, right? That can convert sunlight into sugars, right? And after the useful period when you don't need it, it can go back to soil, go into the roots and become a leaf again, right? What an amazing, like, perspective to look at something extremely complicated, you know, very sophisticated, and at the same time, very natural. And I think that's the kind of thinking we have to really start focusing on, is not just where things are going, but where is it going? There is no such place as away. Things don't go away. They go to somebody else. They go somewhere else. And I think that is the number one thing I'd say, if there is things for people to think about as they go on, is everything that you buy, have you thought about where it's going after? And everything that we design, we have to be thinking about that. And I remember training as a Boy Scout, if you go into the woods, if you pack it in, you have to pack it out, right? Like, you can't just leave a campsite with a bunch of trash. Well, you know, as corporate citizens, we can't leave the world with a bunch of trash either. And I think that's the number one thing. We have to really focus on where is the next, who comes after you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose my final comment would be that it's not so much an ethical problem anymore. This is just a common sense problem that we've got, and we need to really address this. As it's just matter of fact that we have to change the way we're doing things, and we have to find new systems, and we have to work with as many different people and groups as we can to get these solutions up and running.
Thank you so much, Louise. Thank you so much, Ellie, for spending your time in joining us for this session early this morning, and also, I'm sorry, this afternoon. So I look forward to perhaps seeing you both in person, hopefully in ADEX shows in the near run. And then we can continue this discussion because I don't think this will end anytime soon. Thank you, everyone. Hope to see you soon. And our next session is a talk with Shahina Ali. Shahina Ali is from Palais of the Oceans, Maldives. So she'll be sharing with us a little bit more about her solutions in plastic innovations, and also maybe like how she tells a little bit about the process of how PET bottles could be converted into plastic threads, where you could use as shoes, like what they have done together with ADEX. Thank you so much, Louise. Thank you so much, Ellie. See you soon.
Thank you both.
Bye.